Well, hi there. I'm Sandy Allnock. Welcome to my video in the 12 Tags of Christmas with a Feminine Twist, Yupo and watercolor powders. Yupo paper is my new obsession, and watercolor powders seem to be as well, so why not try them together, right? And I wanted to do tags using this W+9 wreath die, so I made wreath-shaped tags. This Yupo paper is a synthetic paper. It's got a really smooth finish. It's not a super heavy paper, but it's very sturdy. And you can die cut with it. You can do all kinds of things with it. But when you watercolor on it, you need to do some special things just to make sure that it doesn't rub off. And with an ornament, you might want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I'm going to use the Woodland Wreaths set from W+9 and just use the wreath die itself. This is a quartered sheet of the Yupo. And you want to make sure you don't get fingerprints all over it because that will resist watercolor. So if you do end up getting your skin oils on them, just wipe the paper down really good with a paper towel, kind of buff it a little bit before you start painting. So I'm going to apply some Brusho to it. And this first one, I'm going to apply the Brusho first and spritz it with water. And you can see how the color just moves instantly. You want to make sure on this Yupo paper you don't overdo it. And I'll do some that are overdone so you can see the difference. This second one with the terracotta, the first color was rose red. This terracotta I'm going to add, and both of these are in the set of 8. So if you wanted to try some Brusho, the set of 8 is one that won't duplicate if you buy the other sets as well. And that one I added the water first, then the Brusho, and then more water. Now, this is the one I'm going to deliberately do it wrong so you can see the difference between what works and what doesn't. And that's by adding just a whole lot of powder and a whole lot of water and just get it really saturated with pigment, just good wet pigment. You can see how easily and quickly it moves because this is a plastic-ish surface. Then I'm going to go for a couple of Color Burst. It's another brand, but same kind of idea. There's about half the amount in those bottles than there is in the Brusho. So it won't last as long, but the colors are way more intense. So I'm doing the same thing. The first one was powder first and then water. The second one is going to be water first and then powder. And then I'll do another fail just so you can, again, get an idea of what that's going to come out like after they're all dry. These are going to have to air dry because since it's a synthetic plastic paper, you don't want to take a heat gun to it. Don't ask me how I know. Because that is just one of those things you don't want to do. You don't want to melt your paper. But here I'm just putting lots and lots of color and lots of water and going to let it pool up so we can see what happens to that by morning. And these do take quite a while to dry. The ones that don't have as much don't take overnight, but I'm just going to leave them all out overnight and finish the project the next day. Now, I also want to show you, I spritzed this one with the water and then I'm just dropping watercolor in. So you can take another kind of watercolor. This is from a Hydrus bottle, the Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrus watercolors, but you can use other watercolors and just drop it in there. And then again, you can also paint with it. So you can paint with a brush. However, this is getting really saturated. I'm getting a lot of color and a lot of heavy stuff on it. And if you end up doing that, I do have a solution for you. And it looks really great on a wreath. I just spread all the color out and then I took a nice flat clean paper towel, laid it down real quickly, and I got the paper towel texture on there. And it came out pretty cool. Then I'm going to use the Heidi Swap spray. I love this stuff. Got to shake it up really good. And then I'm just going to drop little drops onto my wreaths. You can also spray them instead if you'd prefer to do that. Just make sure you don't get huge thick ones. You don't want big gobby thick blobs of that either. And on some of these, the water kind of congealed and made little spots. So I dabbed that off and then set it out to dry. The next day, check them out. They came out really cool. A lot of them held that texture very nicely. Those two on the left are Brusho. Actually, there's 3 on the left are Brusho, and on the right are the Color Burst. And the color is definitely more intense on the Color Burst, but they held the gold nicely. So I've got a really nice gold shimmer to it. And here are the 2 Color Burst ones. So both products will work. And the only problem then with doing Yupo and watercolor and on something like an ornament that's going to be touched for a while is that they're ever so slightly tacky. Now these 2 are very tacky. If you touch that dark spot, your fingerprint is going to stay in it. So you don't want to use those. But the other ones are just a little tiny bit, like if you pressed on it or if a child had slobbery fingers, the color would definitely move. So I'm going to try first some Distress Glaze from Ranger. And this stuff worked pretty well. It did move the color a little bit underneath of my finger. And it didn't do it a lot. It retained a lot of the texture, but it did soften some of it. So it is another way to get a softer look. And then I buffed it ever so slightly, just really light with a Kleenex. I didn't use a paper towel. I wanted something really soft so that I wouldn't remove too much. And it came out great. And this is now set and it's not going to be a problem. So I did that on a couple of the others. And then I wanted to show some other ideas for how you could secure these so these ornaments would last for you as tags or as ornaments if your recipients want to hang on to them. So of course I turned to my friend Glossy Accents, you know, Glossy Accents solves just about everything in my life. So I've covered a couple of these ornaments completely with the Glossy Accents and found that it did this very interesting thing. I went around the edges and then I filled in the centers and I noticed that the watercolor was starting to soften underneath. So I took a pin and started moving the color around. Have you ever done this in any of your cooking ventures or making frosting or anything? I think this just has lots of possibilities. And last but not least, I tried the easiest one, which was to just put a piece of vellum over top of each one. So I've die cut the Ellen Hudson vellum, and this vellum is thick enough that it lays nice and flat. And then I just poked a hole in the top so that I could put my string through, and bada boom, bada bing, done. Each one has a little bit of lawn fawn lawn trimmings on the top that has a little bit of gold accent in it. And the sentiments are die cut from the W+9 gift card die set, and I used a sentiment from the Drummer Boy set using some Delicata ink. And I think they're just so delicate and beautiful and pink and green and gorgeous. I hope you'll try something like this, and be sure to check out the blog for all the other tags in this year's series. Thanks so much, and Merry Christmas.